You're listening to This Week in America with Rick Bratton.
Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America. Of course, the website, thisweekinamerica.us. Great to have you with us on the program today. Julia Schopick is back with us. She is a patient advocate, health writer, creator of the award-winning blog Honest Medicine. She's the author of the Amazon best-selling book Honest Medicine, Effective, Time-Tested, Inexpensive Treatments for Life-Threatening Diseases. She coaches patients on how to approach their doctors about a treatment they don't know about. You can learn more about what Julia is going to be talking about in the program today. Great information available at our website, information on the book at honestmedicine.com. And by the way, more than 100,000 people worldwide have been helped. So what we're talking about actually is life extending, possibly even life-saving. Julia, welcome back to the program. It is great to have you back with us.
Rick, you know I always love being on the program with you. I even say, make me a regular, Rick, and you kind of have. Which
and
I'm
it's sort
delighted.
of, you're on more than I am, it seems like, over the last few weeks. So this is good because we get great response, and you're helping a lot of people. And I want to just establish briefly, and you can go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, go to the YouTube link, and you'll see video versions of the other shows that we did with Julia that explains the background, how the book came about. You can go to iTunes and listen to our interviews as well. Give you a little understanding. But basically, I mentioned you're a patient advocate. You did not start out to be a patient advocate. You sort of became an advocate for your husband, Tim. And then you decided you could reach out and help other people. And now you've got an award-winning website. You've got a best-selling book. Let's go back briefly to 1990 when this journey all began for you with your husband, Tim, who got bad news, but because you weren't willing to accept the bad news, you were able to give him a number more years, extend his life a number more years than what the doctors ever anticipated.
And you're being very, very kind when you say that. And the reason I'm saying that is that part of my mission has to do, to help other people, has to do with the fact that although I was brought up not to believe everything doctor said and not to trust, and just follow along blindly.
Right.
In the first few years, that's exactly what Tim and I did, what my husband and I did. He was diagnosed with a huge cancerous brain tumor, the size of an orange. You know how doctors love to compare tumors to fruit? Anyway, we both, you would have thought that I would have remembered my father's, warnings not to trust what the doctor said.
And your father was a doctor, too. So when he's telling you be somewhat skeptical, this is coming from a gentleman whose profession is medicine and healing people.
And his famous quote, which was, if a doctor tells you he knows all the answers, run like hell.
I do remember that, yes.
Yeah. And also, you interviewed me the last time about my mother's experience with the medical profession, with her mother in 1928, and people can listen to that interview as well. But you would have thought, with my background, that I would have just stepped into gear and started researching, which, by the way, I did after a few years. But it took me a while because we were just terrified. So we did everything the doctor said. And I began to notice after the 2 or 3 year mark, and by the way, he was not supposed to live more than that amount of time. I began to notice, as did Tim, that he was suffering every side effect, every complication from the treatments, not from the tumor, because they had gotten the tumor out. So I did start going online, researching. I found a nutritionist who just extended his life through diet and supplements. But then and he was doing very, very well. And the thing that I noticed was that the doctors were not at all curious about what we were doing, not at all. They said they understood that he was their star patient. That was for sure. But they were not at all interested. As a matter of fact, one doctor, it was his chief neurologist, Tim's chief neurologist, I asked Tim, what medications are you taking? And Tim had a list and he rattled them off. And then Tim said, but I'm also taking a lot of supplements. And the doctor said, next question. And in other words, not interested.
Right.
And then in 2001, we had an experience which I hope people will read about in my book, In Honest Medicine, because I can't tell the whole thing here, but basically Tim had a recurrence 10 years later, and he had another surgery, which I knew he shouldn't have. His skin had trouble healing many times in the past, and it's a long story, but this time we were in trouble. And the doctors did the only thing they knew how to do. They kept doing surgery after surgery after surgery to try to get his skin, to try to get two pieces of skin that would hold together. Nothing worked, except for one thing. Tim was getting more and more brain injured, more and more paralyzed with every surgery that they did. You cannot keep going in to somebody's head and doing surgeries and, anesthesia and all of that. And by the end of these 8 surgeries, and the last of the 8, they actually took grafts from all over his body. And he was really brain injured. He was really paralyzed. He was incontinent and he was bedbound. And at that point, I learned about a treatment called Silverlon, Silverlon. And I learned about it from an integrative doctor with whom I was working on another client's project. I'm a PR consultant. And he told me about this. He told me about this wound healing system, he called it, that was FDA approved for all non-healing wounds. And he said, "Do you think you'd like to try?" And I said, "Oh my God, yes." So it's a long story. It's in the book. I got the inventor of the product of Silverlon, Dr. Bart Flick, to donate the Silverlon to us. And Tim was still in the hospital, of course. I actually convinced the doctor. I don't know how I did it, because doctors don't like it if you bring in treatments from the outside.
Right.
They don't like it. But this doctor was out of tricks, and he said, "Sure." So we put it on Tim's head, and it's a wonderful description in the book about how, and darn, if his head didn't start closing up, it started healing. And that was the point. I was sure the doctors would be excited. I mean, how would you like to have a patient that you had to keep operating on, and he just got sicker and sicker? It's not good for business,
Yes. Yes.
I mean, it is good for business in one way.
In one sense, yes.
And then I was wondering why the doctors weren't coming around and saying, "What was this? Show us." I had even prepared a packet of information about Silverlon. I thought they'd be curious, but they weren't. And one doctor came up to me and he said the words that absolutely changed me and turned me into a patient advocate for other people as well as for ourselves. He said, "We don't think it's what you found," and I'm giving the accent on the proper "you,"
Yes.
"that actually healed your husband's head." And I said, "Well, doctor, what do you think it was?" And he said, "Well, what we think it was," and he kind of furrowed his brow. He said, "We think it was the vancomycin." And vancomycin, Rick, is an IV antibiotic, as I'm sure you know. "We think it was the vancomycin." I said, "But he's been on vancomycin for at least 6 weeks, doctor." And the doctor said the words that changed my life, that ring in my ears to this day. He said, "Vancomycin is like that. It kicks in." I was stunned.
Yes.
I was stunned, And I decided at that date, I hope this wasn't too long a story, but it's a long story.
No, it's so important to hear the background, and you can read it in the book. It's called Honest Medicine: Effective, Time-Tested, Inexpensive Treatments for Life-Threatening Diseases. Julia Schopick, our guest on the program. That's spelled Schopick, award-winning blogger on healthcare and healing. Her website, the award-winning website, is honestmedicine.com. A wealth of information there. And the story you tell is so similar to the people that the contributors to the book, the families, the patients that you would talk to. And sort of walk through this, because if they're going in and meeting resistance, which is what you did, which so many others that you've written about the book and Honest Medicine, what they encountered, what's the first thing they should do? I mean, when you go in and you basically are saying, "Doctor, this doesn't work. Can we try something else?" And you're pretty well shut down at that point. How do you persist? Because a lot of people are intimidated when they're talking to a medical professional. and they're afraid to pursue it. How do you go about talking to the doctor?
You know what? I am now helping patients, as you pointed out in the introduction, on how to speak to their doctor. And it's very, I recently wrote an article on the topic, which as soon as it's published, I will send you a link to it.
Please.
But basically, the answer is that you have to do your homework. And you don't say, I found something on the internet. Doctors hate that. They just go ballistic. If you say, I found a treatment on the internet, and they just close off.
Not the way to start your sentence.
Not the way. You know what it reminds me of, Rick? When my dad was practicing, patients would come into him and say, I found this in the Reader's Digest.
I was watching Dr. Oz the other day, and there's a way to approach it, and basically saying, I found this on the internet is not the way to initiate
no.
that. Okay.
Or in today's terms, don't say I saw it on Dr. Oz, although in Dr. Oz's defense, he does have some wonderful things on his show. But
yes.
That's not the way to talk to your doctor. No. What you should do, however, is to really become a student of the particular treatment you would like to try. And the one that I give the example of in my article that I've written, the column I've written, and in the coaching sessions is really low dose naltrexone. The reason is that is a treatment. I have several treatments in the book, but this is one that any doctor can prescribe for autoimmune diseases. And I give this example of that you look for all the information. Don't bring it all to your doctor, though. Don't do that, and put it together. You educate yourself, make yourself an expert. And this is what I help people to do whom I'm coaching, but become an expert yourself and then choose certain very well chosen pieces of information to bring to your doctor, including but not limited to studies. The treatments that you want to try, if you go on PubMed, just put in PubMed in Google and you will get the government site. There are loads of small studies on almost all treatments. And I don't want to say almost all, but many, many, many treatments, at least all the treatments that are definitely that are profiled in Honest Medicine in my book, they all have small studies. If your doctor is saying that these are, anecdotal, and I hate that word, but if they say that, bring in abstracts. If you can, bring in the whole article about these treatments. And then I give other information too. But do you see what I'm getting at?
Well, yes, and it's almost like you should anticipate some negativity, so you've got a response. If he asks you a question or makes a statement, you want to be able to come back and hold your ground.
That's right. And not only that, but you have to really be respectful. Be respectful of your doctor's time. For instance, don't just throw it at, I also say, put your information in a really good-looking folder. It's a presentation.
Yes, exactly.
And bring it to your doctor and don't say, so many people say, here's what I want to try. What do you think? Don't do that. Say, I put together some information about a treatment that, from my research, looks very promising. How I would like you to take this folder, take this information, and I'd like to come back and talk with you about it at your convenience. How long do you think it will take you to go through this? And let the doctor look at it, and the doctor hopefully will say to you 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Then you make the appointment, and when you come back, you bring an identical folder with you so that both you and the doctor will have the same material and be ready to point out the very interesting points. For instance, with low-dose naltrexone, one of the materials that I give patients, that I give the people that I counsel, is an interview with Dr. Bahari that was published in Alternative Therapies magazine. And although it was an alternative publication, it's a very serious publication. And it tells how Dr. Bahari was Harvard educated, double board certified, in neurology and psychology, went to such prestigious institutions, including Harvard, and did his board certification work in equally prestigious institutions. And This is the kind of information, if your doctor is at all convincible, that has a chance.
So you're almost laying information and research out there that if he could actually come back and almost say, this is my idea, let's give it a try, and who cares who gets the credit if it's going to extend a loved one's life.
You actually got the whole idea of what we're trying to do. Yes, you have to make it so that the doctor won't go home and say, "Oh my God, what a pile of stuff she gave me,"
Right.
And it's all messed up, and I don't know where. People actually do come to their doctors and bring a pile of stuff, and I say stuff because it's not in any order, And I don't mean to be mean about patients, but I do mean I mean to tell your listeners that if you want to convince your doctor, make as professional a presentation as you possibly can. And if you need to work with somebody like me, do it, because you won't have that many chances. You can't do a bad presentation and then the doctor says no, and then you say, whoopsie, can't do that.
Yeah, you pretty well have one shot at this. And when you think about the consequences and the importance of what you're doing, it requires taking a little bit of time, putting it together. All of the information, Julia's story, all of the information she's talking about with the 4 life-saving treatments, what they've been used for, more than 100,000 people worldwide have been helped. A patient advocate. She's been an award-winning blogger because of that. The website is very simple. It's honestmedicine.com. The book is Honest Medicine, Effective Time-Tested, Inexpensive Treatments for Life-Threatening Diseases. And, of course, you can link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. I'm going to take a couple more minutes here on the program because it is so important, that initial step. And I would assume besides a bad presentation, one other major setback would be if you go in and you're presenting something to the doctor that really is snake oil. It's really not going to work. How do we find out as we're going through and making our determination, if we take it to the next step, which is going to the doctor, whether this is legitimate or whether he's going to laugh and say this has been proven to be a snake oil?
What a great question, Rick. It's a wonderful question. And I give, someday I want to conduct teleseminars or webinars on how to choose, which information online is good and which is not. And I seem to have, you know what? I'm giving myself too much credit. After 15 years and growing up with a doctor father, with a mother who was so curious and knowledgeable, obviously I do have a bit of a leg up on this. But after all that time, I can tell if a website is kind of hokey pokey. And one of the things is, don't laugh because it is funny, but if there's too many flashing lights, and miracle cure and that kind of thing.
Exactly, yes.
And you know what? Also, and this is something I feel very sorry for a lot of the kids of today, because they really have not, they don't really know that much about writing and grammar and all that. But if the website is just full of grammatical errors and spelling errors, that's a bad sign too. But, and here's the big, huge but, that some of the sites that you would consider to be, that your doctor might consider to be reputable, some of them are going to be anti the treatments that you are interested in, and they're going to say negative things. And then you're going to look, if you're smart, you're going to notice that a lot of these sites connected with big universities and all that have a lot of pharmaceutical company backing.
Interesting.
And so it's not an easy answer, and I can just give you little hints, but I'm working with that because I think it's a valuable thing to know. How do you tell? I can tell the wheat from the chaff is what you're basically saying.
Well, yes, and it's so important to do it right the first time because, as you say, you don't get like a second and third opportunity to go in as you're talking to the doctor and making this presentation. Right. Time goes by so quickly. We will have Julia back because there is much more to talk about, and this literally is life-extending, life-saving news. She talks in the book about 4 life-saving treatments that work. Actually, these are treatments that have been around for years. They're relatively inexpensive. They're there. They're available. She researched these. They've worked in her case with her husband, Tim. The book is an excellent read. It's called Honest Medicine, Effective, time-tested, inexpensive treatments for life-threatening diseases. There are no grammatical errors that I can recall in the book. It's very well done. It's very well documented. A number of actual case studies in there. A number of doctors have written in the book. So it's something you can pick up and feel like, okay, this is first-rate information I'm getting here. Information is valuable at the website honestmedicine.com. Julia Schopick, our guest on the program. That's spelled Schopick. And, of course, information available, as always, you can link on directly at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Julia, time goes by way too quickly. Because of that, we will have you back on future programs. Thank you for being with us. Some great information today.
Oh, Rick, you are. You're the best interviewer. You know that.
Well,
So
you're the best guest, so there. Thank you. The guest really makes the show, and you've got such great information for everybody out there, and I hope that we're changing some lives by having people understand that you don't necessarily have to accept what you're hearing from the medical community. There may be other alternatives for you out there that work. Again, all the information at our website, thisweekinamerica.us.